And good morning. Try and get my images up here to shift gears to talk about weather a little bit, but some of I will follow up on some of what Young Suk has covered here. It's and I want to start with some of that and just talk a little bit about our heat wave conditions here, that's sort of the big news of that it's past news, but still I think noteworthy, and we've had quite a few questions actually about this. But what you see here, to start off with, these are daily maximum temperatures at Lansing. And it's fairly representative of many areas in Michigan, but from May 1 through yesterday, and at the very end here, you can see the days, the blue is the observed max and minimum temperature there, and it's relative to climatology. And that's why really I wanted to show this. But we had 4 days here, and in many places, many parts of Michigan, we had 4 consecutive days at or above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't happen that often in Michigan. And a couple things though about the heat wave itself. That with the We talked about this last week, and the forecast guidance did a fairly good job. It was a big upper air ridge right over the Great Lakes region in the eastern U.S. that led to this, and it turned out to it handled it really pretty well. But a couple things about the conditions actually. We did see temperatures I think the highest I saw during the event was 99, but there were many areas that saw mid and or observed mid and upper 90s. But one of the really, I think, critical pieces of this was the high dew point temperatures. The humidity levels were very high. Dew point temperatures during this event were into the 70s. And it's something we don't see very often in Michigan to see it that high. And again, that's why it felt so oppressive. And the combination of the air temperatures in the 90s and dew point temperatures in the 70s led to heat index values way up above 100 and of course, extreme discomfort. There was another piece of that we typically don't talk about as much, but it's also, we're just after solstice. That was occurred early, actually, I think late on the 20th of June here, but that's when we see the strongest solar radiation load during the entire year of the whole annual cycle. The sun is as far north as it gets up Tropic of Cancer, if you looked at well, you can get these on EnviroWeather and look, but we had 1,000 watts per meter squared last weekend and early this week. At the same time, you had that combination of high temperature and high humidity, and that's a really difficult situation or a really difficult setting, very stressful. And if you notice, even in well-watered landscapes, well-watered plants, with that amount of solar radiation, the plant just can't. It's very difficult for it to keep up under any circumstances. And I guess the long and the short of this is it doesn't happen that often. It's very unusual for Michigan, and keeping with that on the lower left-hand side here, I went back and looked at how many times we had a lot of media calls about when's the last time we saw a heat wave like this, and how often does it occur? Well, it doesn't occur very often, but you can see I went back about 20 years here, and there were six events that showed up in the records here just recently. And the most recent time this occurred was in July of 2022. But a couple take homes here. One is that you can also see that it was at least 4 days. Some of those were 6 days long. So it's been even worse in the past. But the bottom line is that yes, this is unusual, but it happens every couple of years, 2 to 3 years, that type of an event in Michigan. The other thing I think it's also interesting, and it goes back to my comments about the solar radiation, which again is we're near that maximum annual level right now. And that is that when these events do occur, they tend to be later in the year. Typically, the warmest month chronologically in Michigan, almost everywhere, is July. And when we see the annual temperature cycle typically peak in the last 2 weeks of July. Some places it's even into the very beginning of August. But that's when we're most likely to see a string of days like this. Not typically in the middle or even the third week of June, like it was this year. There's one note that there is one other here at Lansing that did show up back in 2017, but that's the exception. That's not typically we see this later on. So the heat wave was there, but it was earlier than it typically occurs at this time of the year. So for the week, not surprisingly, our mean temperatures departure way above normal state and region wide. You can see clearly here 6 to as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. That isn't a surprise given the temperatures we saw. And if remembering just about what we are, the figure we just saw, many days, especially last weekend and early this week, our minimum temperatures only fell into the mid and upper 70s. That's also very unusual in Michigan, and that's pretty close to the normal high temperature. So we were some days 15 to 20 degrees warmer than normal. But when we took the whole week together and you average that together, and this is again for the 18th through the 24th, it's way above where we typically are. Precip was an interesting story here on the right hand side. And it really, the location really was important here because we had some areas of the state, notably the southeastern lower, portions of the northern lower peninsula, and then pieces of the UP where we had significant rain, at least 2 inches. Some cases we had as much as 4 inches of rain. And this goes through the 25th. Note that we've had rainfall in the last 24 hours. I'll look at that here just a second. But also at the same time, note western lower peninsula, the blues here, there are areas that picked up less than a half an inch. And some of that scattered around the UP. So the rainfall was very spotty or at least variable from place to place. And there are spots in the state here, especially across, well, the central and western lower that have trended drier than normal for some time. And of course, with those high temperatures and very high potential evapotranspiration rates. I didn't talk about that. I should have, especially given what Young Suk talked about. We had values of potential evapotranspiration during the heat wave this past week, especially on Sunday and Monday, approaching 3/10 of an inch per day. That is extreme for Michigan. We rare that's near the top of what we would ever see in Michigan. That describes the atmospheric demand for water at that particular point in time if it were available. Of course, sometimes it's not. But if the water were available, we would see 0.28 or 0.27. And if you look at EnviroWeather, you can see those daily values. That's what goes into the irrigation scheduling software to inform that. But the values we saw here over the last several days were at the top of what we ever see in Michigan. And as a result, some areas of the state have really gotten dry. It isn't critical yet, but it's something we're watching. On the left-hand side here, this is the drought monitor, the most recent version of the drought monitor, and you can see the area across central lower Michigan, especially over in the Saginaw Valley. That area has been abnormally dry for several months now. But the areas that I'm talking about now or looking at more closely over in the western and southwestern portion of lower Michigan, that's an area that has been missed by some of the recent rainfall. We've had a lot of chances for rainfall, it's just that those areas have been mixed or missed. And on the right-hand side here, these are soil moisture percentiles for the top 3 feet. So it's looking at a large volume of soil here, but generally giving for a rain-fed system here, the browns down here indicate drier than is normally the case here climatologically. And you can see a large area of southwestern lower that has moved into these smaller percentiles here. So that's one that we're looking at, especially because again, it was that area, a lot of it was missed. Um, Degree day accumulations for the season. This is another interesting one because we had cooler than normal conditions back late May into early June, and we just, of course, that was reversed by a heat wave. On the outer panels here, those are seasonal accumulations beginning 1 March, base 50 Fahrenheit, and those values range from a little over 400 in the far north to as much as 1,000 in the far south. And on the far right-hand side here, relative to normal, and this map has really changed a lot, but you can see most of the state is that tan color, meaning that it's close. The departures are really they're pretty close to normal for the degree even, but at any given time we've been anything but normal. We've had surpluses at one point, we've had deficits at another. The panel in the middle here, those are degree day. This is using the corn 8650 cutoff method, looking specifically at corn with a May 1 beginning seasonal total here. And these are departures from normal. And what you can see is for that period, we have negative departures for much of lower Michigan. It's a little closer up in the UP, but again, we're lagging a little bit behind normal where we typically are. But given the forecast and given where we've just been, that likely will be changing. So the numbers here, we probably will see more red on that chart on the far right-hand side here as we move into the next couple of weeks with probably above normal degree day accumulations likely for the next 1 to 2 weeks. This morning, looking at our weather map on the left-hand side here, we have a frontal boundary west to east across the state, across the lower peninsula, and there's still some scattered shower and thunderstorm activity that moved through much of northern Michigan overnight, and it's still over portions of, again, northern, lower, and far eastern upper Michigan. That's moving off to the east, and will probably be most of that will be done with over the next couple of hours, but there's going to be another wave that develops here, especially during the afternoon, and we're going to be looking at a very unsettled pattern for at least the next 24 to 48 hours, or 36 hours, let's say. On the right-hand side here, I wanted to add this because these are the totals that you saw before with the precipitation did not include what fell last night. This graphic does have what fell last night, and you can see much of Upper Michigan got a solid half or better inch of precip overnight, but look south. And we were exchanging stories here earlier before we started. Some areas got downpours, and many other areas got sprinkles or nothing. And you can see that clearly. There were a few spots here with green. The green is a half an inch on this particular graphic, but you can see a lot of areas either light blue or white, indicating little or no precipitation. So very, very spotty rainfall, at least over the last day. That probably we'll see some of that pattern again later today and tomorrow, but some of those spots probably will fill in, given that we have at least two major chances for precipitation here over the next couple of days. On the surface map here this morning, frontal boundary I mentioned, you can see that across lower Michigan. The greens here indicating again at least the potential for scattered shower and thunderstorm activity. This frontal boundary has been here all the way back since Tuesday, and it's going to stay with us for another couple days. So as we look through, I step through these maps here, you can see the maps look very, very similar. And it's not we're trying to make that up, but it's just that frontal boundary is not going to move very far. But as long as it's here with all this moisture we have in the lower atmosphere, there will be at least the threat of, and we'll call it scattered showers and thunderstorms. Not everybody gets rain, but there will be showers and thunderstorms develop. You might be able to see one might go over you, but that environment will continue through at least tomorrow. By tonight, again, the boundary, it shifts, it sags a little bit to the south in this case, and then tomorrow it goes back as a warm front. Here it is tomorrow morning. And then finally, by Saturday morning, we should see a frontal boundary actually and a little bit of a push of slightly cooler air move into the state. That'll be overnight Friday into Saturday. But before then, we will see, again, at least a 50-50 chance at any given location of more showers and thunderstorms, especially during the afternoon and early evening when the atmosphere is most unstable. That will be the case today, and it will likely be the case tomorrow. One exception, we could see some storms, especially in southern lower peninsula where it's a little bit warmer, there's a little bit more instability. We could see some pretty strong storms. If there's anything like that, the primary threat would be, two things, probably some strong winds are possible, but also some heavy rain would be possible. But it's not going to be widespread. It probably will be spotty once again. So after this system, that cold front moves through tomorrow night and brings a little bit cooler conditions in for Saturday. Our high temperatures will be in many areas the mid and even some upper 80s once again today and tomorrow. They'll fall back a few degrees on Saturday with that high pressure moves in, but another weather system comes in later on Sunday, beginning up in western upper Michigan and then spreading to the east and south overnight Sunday and into Monday. So after tomorrow, the next chance for rain likely coming. Most of the state, the greatest threat of rain will probably be on Monday, as it's looking right now. And then beyond that, looking at a fairly progressive jet stream type of pattern with more seasonable temperatures. So no more heat wave, at least in the foreseeable future here. Closer to normal, probably still though a little bit above normal. Water demand for the upcoming week, given that outlook and what we've just talked about here, near to a little bit above normal. Our daily averages here are about, this is reference PET that young Sook talked about, but 14 hundredths of an inch in areas near the lakes where it's coolest to a little bit over 2/10 of an inch per day in the south, where we'll also see the warmest temperatures. So not as extreme as what we saw in the last week, fortunately. And then finally here, looking ahead in the medium range, both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks are fairly consistent, but what we're seeing a progressive type of pattern. So no feature stays in one place very long. That basically that's just normal summer variability. It's a little bit less predictable, unfortunately, for the meteorologist, but it still indicates changeable conditions over time. And for both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks here for medium range, they suggest the near normal. Mean temperatures, maybe normal to above normal precipitation, but still a fairly active storm track through the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. So several chances for precipitation, at least normal, if not even a little bit above normal. The threat of rainfall as we move into early July. Lastly, we have a new long lead outlook that was issued late last week, and it's somewhat consistent with what you just saw in the medium range, but the outlook for July on the top two panels here, and the message here is warmer than normal. And that's been what these outlooks have been calling for. They're still consistent for the month of July, and that's the upper left one here. You can see warmer than normal temperatures indicated. And then for precipitation, Michigan is really between two areas, one of wetter than normal conditions to our south and east, and one of drier than normal conditions to our west. But so we'll call it warmer, and then maybe normal to above normal for precipitation. And then for the remainder of the growing season, for the July through September period, those are the bottom two panels. Once again, also warmer than normal with a similar outlook for precipitation. You can see Michigan's at the equal chances, so no real direction for precip. But the warmer than normal, I think, is one of the take homes that we have here with the outlooks. And so I'll wrap things up here by saying again, pretty unsettled here, very summer-like for the next couple days, with at least two major chances for precipitation here during the next 2 days. Dry on Saturday, and then rain once again late in the weekend into early next week.